Arena of Encounter. Upon Mount Zion, there is deliverance. Arena of Encounter is an interdenominational prayer ground which God has used to heal, change, and transformed many lives within and outside the nation. God, via the Encounter ground, put laughter into the mouth of some hopeless people. God, through his servant, Pastor Oluwarotimi Peter, is ever available for anyone who wish to come and see. Every Tuesday, 9 a.m. is Deliverance and Miracle Day for those who have been booked on appointment by God's servant within and outside the town, city, and nation. Wednesday is a special program called Hour of Encounter featuring Jesus the Great Healer is ready to give you your desired testimony. For further information, call 08033656797. Jesus is waiting. Power of his reality church. And it shall come to pass in the last day that the mountain of the Lord house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and all the nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of Jacob, and he will teach us of his way, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. This is the picture of church called Power of his Reality Church, situated in Okeobere off Ijoka Road, Akure. Fellowship with us every Sunday, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. You can contact our Father in the Lord via 080-3365-6797 or follow us through any of our online programs. Jesus is Lord.
Goliath. 2 Samuel 21:19. The most well-known giant in history is Goliath from the Bible. He was a champion from the Philistine camp who fought as an armored charioteer. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. 1 Samuel 17:4. We don't know what that information means at face value because we don't measure things in cubits or spans. We measure them in feet and inches. So let us put it in layman's terms. Goliath was a massive man, standing at least 9 feet 9 inches tall. And when you consider the length of his arms, when he lifted them up over his head, you can imagine what an imposing creature he must have been. It wasn't just his size though. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor, of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. On his legs he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. His shield-bearer went ahead of him. 1 Samuel 17:5-7 NIV. He was dressed in what we'd call a mail coat. The Philistines warmed up by donning a large canvas-like undergarment with overlapping bronze ringlets. From shoulder to knee, this coat of mail shielded the wearer from the enemy's weapons. Body armor of this size and type weighed 5,000 shekels of bronze, which equates to between 175 and 200 pounds in modern terms. The armor only included the coat of mail. Goliath, on the other hand, wore a bronze helmet, bronze leggings, greaves, to protect his shins, and carried a bronze javelin, or spear, slung between his shoulders. The head of his spear alone weighed 600 shekels of iron, or about 20 to 25 pounds. According to the written account, he marched ahead of him with a shield carrier. The Hebrew word used here refers to the largest battle shield, which is the size of an adult man. It was unmistakably intended to protect his body from incoming arrows. So in addition to his body armor, Goliath had this guy racing ahead of him, wielding a man-sized shield for extra protection. Allow your mind to picture such an imposing sight for a moment. Consider how terrifying it would have been to take on a giant of this size who is protected by this much armor. Without a doubt, the odds are stacked against anyone foolish enough to confront him in battle. Take note of what this gigantic warrior did. Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Samuel 17:8 and 9. Goliath proposed a popular strategy in Eastern civilization, namely representative combat, or one-on-one conflict. He'd represent the Philistine army, while Israel's choice would represent the Israelite army. And whoever lost, his entire army perished. There's no reason to involve your entire army in this. Just send a fighter and I'll fight him. I am the victor. I am the best. Goliath did not issue this challenge once and then disappear. No, this challenge lasted 40 days. For 40 days, the Philistine came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. 1 Samuel 17:16. He marched out there every morning and evening for well over a month, flaunting his size and strength, daring someone to challenge him. Meanwhile, in the Judean mountains near Bethlehem, a young boy named David was tending to his father's sheep. He was much too young to join the army. In reality, David was much likely unaware of the conflict between the Israelites and the Philistines at that time. He might not have even heard of Goliath. His only knowledge was that 3 of his older brothers were serving in Saul's army. On the other hand, David's father was concerned about his 3 eldest sons. Jesse was getting older and would probably be unable to complete the journey across the mountains on his own. So he called his youngest son and told him, "David, I need you to run an errand for me. Take now for your brothers an ephah of this roasted grain and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to your brothers. Bring also these 10 cuts of cheese to the commander of their 1,000, and look into the welfare of your brothers, and bring back news of them." 1 Samuel 17:17 and 18. And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper, and took, and went, as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. 1 Samuel 17:20. Then as he approaches the outskirts of the Israeli camp, he notices the troops preparing for battle and hears the war cry. He simply wants to observe and see what happens. Then David dashed to the front lines to greet his brothers, leaving his luggage in the care of the baggage handler. David left his things with the keeper of supplies, ran to the battle lines, and asked his brothers how they were. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance, and David heard it. 1 Samuel 17:22 and 23. Consider the following scenario. While standing there with his 3 brothers, David hears a loud cry from across the valley, and instantly, everyone in his immediate vicinity is sprinting to the back and crawling inside their tents. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were sore afraid. 1 Samuel 17:24. Keep in mind that David has never seen or heard of this Gath giant's challenge. As he looks across the battlefield, he sees a giant of a man, covered in armor, shouting threats and defiance and cursing the God of Israel. And David was enraged by this. Remember, this is the 41st day that the Israelites have faced Goliath, but this is the first time it has happened to David. Then David spoke to the men who were standing by him and saying, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should taunt the armies of the living God?" And the people answered him in accord with his word, saying, "Thus it will be done for the man who kills him." 1 Samuel 17:26 through 27. David then meets King Saul. David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Saul replied, "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord will be with you." Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around, because he was not used to them. "I cannot go in these," he said to Saul, "because I am not used to them." So he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand, approached the Philistine. 1 Samuel 17:32-40. So here's David, dressed in his most basic shepherd robes and armed with his most basic shepherd weapons, his sling and his staff, and ready to fight. Then there's the watershed moment. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with a shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was a little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome, and he despised him. He said to David, "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds and of the wild animals." David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and of the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel." 1 Samuel 17:41-46. Consider the possibilities. David remained unafraid in the face of this monstrous beast. David's only weapons were a sling and a stone against a giant clad in 200 pounds of armor. One stone shot through the air with a whoosh, 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 and that was the end of it. Goliath was reduced to a size of a bag of rocks. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's. He will give all of you into our hands. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on his forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the sheath. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. 1 Samuel 17:47-51. The Philistines did not return after that. When they realized their champion was no longer alive, they split the scene. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. Their dead were strewn along the Sharaim road to Gath and Ekron. When the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered their camp. 1 Samuel 17:52-53. Then David brought the head of the Philistine to Jerusalem. David took the Philistine's head and brought it to Jerusalem. He put the Philistine's weapons in his own tent. 1 Samuel 17:54. Biblical story of David and Goliath is one of the most well-known stories in the Bible. It is a lesson in bravery, faith, and overcoming the seemingly impossible. Was Goliath a Nephilim? Some scholars believe that Goliath the Gittite, a Gath resident, belonged to a race known as the Nephilim. Other experts argue that Goliath was a Rephate because the Nephilim were destroyed in the Great Flood during Noah's time. Only Noah's family survived. Nearly 20 times in the Bible, the Nephites are mentioned. Deuteronomy 2:11 and Deuteronomy 20:22, Joshua 12:4, Deuteronomy 3:11-13. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of giants. Behold, his bedstead was a bedstead of iron. Is it not in Rabbath of the children of Ammon? 9 cubits was the length thereof, and 4 cubits the breadth of it, after the cubit of a man. And this land which we possessed at that time from Aror, which is by the river Arnon, and half Mount Gilead, and the cities thereof, gave I unto the Reubenites and to the Gadites, and the rest of Gilead and all Bashan, being the kingdom of Og, gave I unto the half tribe of Manasseh, all the region of Argob, with all Bashan, which was called the land of giants. Some scholars believe the Philistines descended from the Anakim. Goliath's champion status is enhanced by the fact that Gath was an ancient Anakim stronghold. Some scientists believe Goliath has an identifiable family tree, implying autosomal dominant inheritance, which causes familial acromegaly or giantism. In biblical times, Goliath was a colossal figure. The relations of Goliath. There are also other giants mentioned in 2 Samuel 21:15-22 and 1 Chronicles 20:4-8 who were related to Goliath in the Bible. 2 Samuel 21:15-22. Moreover, the Philistines had yet war again with Israel, and David went down, and his servants with him, and fought against the Philistines, and David waxed faint. And Ishbi-benob, which was one of the sons of the giant, the weight of whose spear weighed 300 shekels of brass in weight, he being girded with a new sword, thought to have slain David. But Abishai, the son of Jeriah, succored him, and smote the Philistine, and killed him. Then the men of David swore unto him, saying, Thou shalt go no more out with us to battle, that thou quench not the light of Israel. And it came to pass after this, that there was again a battle with the Philistines at Gob. Then Sibbecai the Hushathite slew Saph, which was of the sons of the giant. And there was again a battle in Gob with the Philistines, where Elhanan the son of Jeriah-Rigam, a Bethlehemite, slew the brother of Goliath the Gittite, the staff of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. And there was yet a battle in Gath, where was a man of great stature, that had on every hand 6 fingers, and on every foot 6 toes, 24 in number, and he also was born to the giant. And when he defied Israel, Jonathan the son of Shimea, the brother of David, slew him. These 4 were born to the giant in Gath, and fell by the hand of David, and by the hand of his servants. 1 Chronicles 20:4-8. And it came to pass after this, that there arose a war at Gezer with the Philistines, at which time Sibbecai the Hushathite slew Sippai, that was of the children of the giant, and they were subdued. And there was a war again with the Philistines, and Elhanan the son of Jair slew Lami, the brother of Goliath the Gittite, whose spear staff was like a weaver's beam. And yet again there was war at Gath, where a man of great stature, whose fingers and toes were 24, 6 on each hand, and 6 on each foot, and he also was the son of the giant. But when he defied Israel, Jonathan the son of Shimea, David's brother, slew him. These were born unto the giant in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David, and by the hand of his servants. These were Ishbi-benob, whose bronze spearhead weighed 300 shekels, or 3.42 kilograms, or 7.5 pounds. Saph, Lami, brother of Goliath, who had a spear with a shaft like a weaver's rod, and an unnamed warrior, a huge man with 6 fingers on each hand, and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. The story of Goliath in the Bible attests to God's mighty power and great strength over his enemies, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The story of Goliath in the Bible teaches us that even if we are currently battling big enemies and giant problems that are threatening our peace and livelihood, our Almighty Creator will protect and deliver us from all the challenges of this life.
Arena of Encounter. Upon Mount Zion, there is deliverance. Arena of Encounter is an interdenominational prayer ground which God has used to heal, change, and transformed many lives within and outside the nation. God, via the Encounter ground, put laughter into the mouth of some hopeless people. God, through his servant, Pastor Oluwarotimi Peter, is ever available for anyone who wish to come and see. Every Tuesday, 9 a.m. is Deliverance and Miracle Day for those who have been booked on appointment by God's servant within and outside the town, city, and nation. Wednesday is a special program called Hour of Encounter.